Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Chet Buchanan from 98.5 KLUC in Las Vegas. That means nothing to you, but I'm sucking up to these guys because one day we are going to all end up working for them. You're listening to the Hoppe and SuperRICH Show.
What's up? This is the Hoppe and SuperRICH Show. I'm Hoppe.
And I'm SuperRICH.
To call the show, it's 630-785-2510. That's 630-785-2510. And Ryan, who do we have on the phone line?
On the phone line, we have longtime radio personality Mike Tomano as he joins theedgeonair.com. What's up, Mike?
Hey, greetings, guys. How are you? And congratulations for keeping real broadcasting alive. Bless your hearts.
Thank you so much. Now, we want the radio world to know about your life. So, where did you grow up as a kid?
I grew up near Midway Airport on the south side of Chicago and attended school there and Columbia College, Southsider, pretty much for most of my life. And now for the last 17 or 18 years, I've been in the Southlands of Joliet and thereabouts. Actually, I live farther south literally I live in the sticks, so that's why I had to drive to Joliet so I can get a signal and talk to you guys today.
And now, what was it like to be alive in the 70s and 80s?
Well, that's a wide question. It was good. As far as radio goes, I grew up in the heyday of when XRT was an actual free-form rock station. I remember hearing jocks like Bobby Scafish and Johnny Mars back then. They would segue from the Hawaii Five-0 theme song by the Ventures to John Lee Hooker, to something by Lou Reed. It was just an amazing time as a music lover to be listening to radio. And then, personality-wise, we had Steve Dahl and Gary Meyer doing the Breakfast Club on the Loop, and Sky Daniels, and just Robert Murphy in the morning was in his heyday in the 80s on Q101. And it was just, for someone who was enamored by the art form of both music radio and personality radio, it was a golden age, and I knew when I was about in sixth grade what I wanted to do with my life, and I wanted to be on the radio and do what those guys were doing.
So, who are some of your major influences in the radio business?
Well, Steve Dahl was the impetus for what I did. I would say Steve and Gary were really the epiphany that I had listening to them, and how just off the cuff and free form and surreal and bizarre their show was. It really took a strong hold of me. And then, like I said, as far as music jocks, I always listen to Bobby Scafish. The way he could deliver a song that you've heard, 2,000 times and make it sound fresh just by the way he presents it. Mm-hmm. So all those guys, Bob Stroud, Murphy in the morning. Robert Murphy is to this day such a professional behind the mic, and just so polished and great. So all those guys that I grew up with listening to. And then at the same time, there was something called the National Lampoon Radio Hour that would play at night on WXRT at the time. And that was John Belushi and Bill Murray and Harold Ramis and all these amazing creative comic talents. So it's kind of a mishmash of all that stuff that influenced me to kind of forge my own vision for the radio show that I did, primarily in the south suburbs for 17 years.
And now, what was it about Dahl and Gary Meyer that you liked so much, and do you think their type of talk radio could work in 2014?
Well, there's two answers to that question. What inspired me so much was they were very hip and very intelligent and very, the stuff they were doing was very inspired, and they were on the cutting edge, and they were fearless in what they did, and they weren't afraid to experiment and take risks on the air. And so that's what really grabbed me about them. They were such engaging personalities. They made you a part of their personal lives on the air. And could that style work today? I think it could. Whether or not corporations will let it is yet to be seen. And one would hope the pendulum would swing. And we've seen the pendulum go back and forth, where personality was real hot in the 80s, and then it kind of died down into this cookie-cutter thing that they were doing, where one station in Springfield, Missouri was doing something, so a station in Dubuque, Iowa would do the exact same thing. We still see that. I think with the advent of the Internet, and with podcasting in particular, you're going to see there's a whole realm of great personalities doing freeform radio like yourselves and so many others that the pendulum might not have to swing back as far as terrestrial radio goes. There's still going to be an outlet for creativity now with the internet.
Now, have you ever met guys like Steve Dahl or Gary Meyer or anybody like that?
Yeah, I've met them both. I hung out with Steve Dahl
Cool.
a few months ago in Mokina. A real gentleman. I'm friends with Kevin Matthews. He's a dear friend of mine, and those guys are just—they're throwbacks to the heyday of great radio, and they put so much effort into being individuals on the air that it can't help but inspire one to do the same. But yeah, I know Steve, and I know Kevin, and I've met so many people. I actually, when I was a junior in high school, I had that job shadow day thing that they do,
Yeah.
and I went and watched Bobby Skafish do his show. So I've been a radio, fan as well for many, many years. And through the years, I've had the pleasure to work and learn from some great people like Ed Till, who I think he still does a podcast. I'm not sure. It's really hard to find it on the air. I mean, I'm sorry, online, because you look them up, and sometimes the shows that are up are older, or it's kind of hard to pinpoint where he's broadcasting from. But Ed, I called him when I was a young man, and I said, I'm in radio, and I want to learn talk radio. And so my job was to drive Ed to work and watch him. And a lot of people would laugh and say, well, that's not really, but it was a great learning experience, because he is so good at conversation and so good at debate and show prep that it was a real learning experience.
Now,
and Murphy. I know Murphy. Robert Murphy and I are neighbors in Michigan. So,
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
His house is a lot nicer than mine. And I think actually my roof, I think the realtor called me yesterday and my roof is caving in from all the damn snow. But yeah, so I've had the pleasure of interviewing these guys like you guys do. I've interviewed a lot of my inspirations on the air. Charles Lacudero was another one. He was in Boston for a quarter of a century. He ruled the airwaves in the morning. He did a great mixture of music and comedy talk lifestyle radio that is just amazing. And he's in Hawaii now. So I keep in touch with him by email.
And now, what are some shows that you like to listen to now or check out?
That's a good question. I don't listen to a lot of terrestrial radio. Once in a while, I'll bounce around and find a song. I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan.
Yes.
And I'm not a fan of his comedy. I never found him to be a funny stand-up comic, but he has some really interesting guests and delves into some really bizarre, wonderful topics on his podcast. I like Emily Volman, is a little-known woman on the internet who does a great, engaging show. Who else? I like Adam Carolla. I think he's real good. I listen to Steve Dahl on his podcast, and Kevin Matthews is probably doing the funniest shows of his career on his podcast. I listen to you guys. I listen to a lot of college radio stations, because I think that the spirit of radio is still alive in a lot of the college radio stations. And what else do I listen to on the internet? I bounce around. I mentioned Adam Carolla. I think he does a great job, and the stuff on his page is really good. And then I'll find like little-known radio stations throughout the country that are still. I'm a big proponent of freeform radio, so I'll find like some radio stations in San Jose, California, or whatever, Detroit, that are online, and I'll listen to them.
And now, do you think that edgy talk radio can ever come back to the airwaves? Because it seems like the one place you can find it is on Freeform, and it just seems not fair to the type of brand that it should be.
Edgy talk radio, I think Michael Savage is probably the most entertaining 3 hours on the radio right now on terrestrial radio, and it's not whether or not you agree with his politics. It's the way he presents his show is just spectacular. And I like Dennis Miller a lot. I think he does an intelligent job, and it's a good show. But yeah, there's a place. It's just can you find a place to put it? That's the thing. Even local AM stations, which once had a lineup of local talk shows, are now sometimes doing a local morning show that does the farm report and local news, and then the next thing they'll do is fill out the day with satellite programming, which, I understand the economics involved, but, it also has diminishing returns, I think, in terms of branding a radio station.
Now, you worked in Kankakee for over 15 years and had a great career. Who are some of your favorite people that you've met and some of your favorite memories while working there?
I did a radio show with a gentleman named Rob West on their AM station in Kankakee, and we had the highest ratings in the history of the market, which that was a great moment in my life. I've won 9 Illinois Broadcasters Association awards for best morning show, and that was a thrill each and every time to be recognized by the industry peers. As far as people that I've met so many celebrities over the years, and the interviews that I did, I had an opportunity to interview Bob Newhart the day after he awarded Richard Pryor with his Mark Twain Award for humor, which that was amazing. I interviewed John Entwistle from The Who. That was great. Both of those tapes accidentally erased by other people at the radio station, so that's sad. But
oh man,
boy, the celebrities that I've met. I have a dear friend named Ted Nugent who I met initially by interviewing him on my radio show, and subsequently we've become really good friends, and I talk to him probably on a daily basis. Jim Peterick from the Ides of March at Fiverr. It was great to interview him. Boy, the interviews that I was able to do were just, it was amazing. I interviewed Greg Giraldo the week before he died, and that's on YouTube. I think you could check that out.
And now, are you doing any upcoming things for podcasts and stuff?
Yeah, well, my podcast right now is at MikeTomano.com, MikeTomano.com. It's a weekly podcast, and a lot of it revolves around my love of the great outdoors. I'm a big proponent and activist for the great outdoors lifestyle, which hunting, fishing, canoeing, camping. And I run a kids camp that teaches kids archery and canoeing skills and things like that. We take them fishing. So that's up at MikeTomano.com. I have 2 webcasts that I'm producing now. One is called Mike Tomano's Wild and Free, which is an outdoors program. And the other one is called Music is My Life, which is an inside, in-depth webcast dedicated to music. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Dweezil Zappa, and his father was such a great inspiration to me. I interviewed Dweezil. He'll be on the first episode. That'll probably be up next week at MikeTomano.com.
And where do you think radio is going? Is it going to be online, or could the FM and AM radio make a comeback? Like, where is this business going?
Well, I think, I touched on it before. I think if people really want to be creative and take chances and take creative risks and innovate, I think the Internet is the place to go if you want to pursue that. So the need for someone to be on terrestrial radio is going to diminish, I believe, As far as, terrestrial radio, it's always going to be a local champion. So if you could put a radio station together that focuses on local issues of a town or the city of license, I think you'll still have a place. FM radio, I don't know if they feel that there's a niche to play the same songs over and over. This is stuff I've been complaining about since before I even started radio.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I to say? I left radio in March of 2013, so it's been over a year since I've been on the air, and the industry's changed incredibly so, and there's a lot to consider. If you want to be a broadcaster, I think don't diminish the role of the terrestrial radio, but you might want to make sure that you have a working knowledge of the Internet and podcasts,
right,
and social media, because I think the floodgates are open now. And so now everybody and his sister has a podcast, and people are worried about that. Well, you're just going to be thrown in a sea of podcasts. If you're good, you'll always rise to the top. And if you have something to offer, you'll always have people find you if you promote yourself properly. So, to sum up the question, FM and AM radio, is it going to come back to the days of its heightened creativity? I doubt it very much so. And the second thing is, do I care? No, because I'm in love with podcasting and I'm in love with the internet, and I think once people learn how to monetize their podcast, you'll see a great renaissance in broadcasting. I think you are seeing it now, actually.
Okay, well, thanks for coming on the show, Mike. We'd love to have you on again sometime to talk about the news and stuff.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, listen, it's a real pleasure talking to you guys, and I appreciate you considering me. So best to you both, and continued success.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, buddy.
And that was Mike Tomano, a longtime radio DJ and talk show host, a guy I grew up listening to. All right, we're going to come back on the Hoppe and SuperRICH show and get to some Super Rich news after this.
Definitely.
Hang on. We will be right back.
The Hoppe and SuperRICH Show.